Hi everyone, it's Jessica and Happy New Year. So this is my first layout of 2025 and I am very excited. I actually ran out of pictures to scrapbook, and when I was at my parents' house over the holidays, my dad pulled this old photo out. It looks like it had been printed at somebody's home, probably back in the early 2000s or late 90s, and it is a picture of my parents on a trip to Arizona. And I remembered that I had this stamp from Studio Calico that was an Arizona stamp. And I thought, you know what, how perfect. I've got these papers here from one of my hip kits, and I pulled a couple of pieces of cardstock to go along with it. And so I think I'm going to use that to scrapbook this photo. So I did find this page map design on Pinterest, and that is going to be my inspiration. So like I said, my dad had been going through some old things and he found this picture. We weren't even really sure exactly when it was taken. We did used to live in Arizona, but I'm pretty sure that this is from a trip that my parents took years later. And so we'll have to figure that out now that I have scrapbooked it. But he gave it to me and I was like, okay, it's old and it needs a little bit of help. It needs to get behind a page protector. So for the layout, I decided to go with some 3x4 pieces of pattern paper. So I just cut up those papers from that Hip Kit Club. The collection was called Good Vibes and it was from a few months ago. And I'm going to build this layout on a piece of shortbread colored cardstock from Close to My Heart. I thought it would be fun to do something other than white, and this color just kind of reminds me of the sand color of the desert. Then I have this final spot down here where I'm going to put journaling, and I kind of contemplated for a minute putting maybe a piece of turquoise colored cardstock down there instead of white. But then I just decided to kind of test it real quick here as a little photo mat and see if I liked pulling that color in that way instead, and I did. So later, I will cut my sixth little rectangle there as the journaling spot, and I'm going to go ahead and finish cutting this piece of Glacier cardstock down to be my photo mat. I do quite a bit of moving things around, and honestly, I played with this so much that I'm not even sure that by the time I go to glue it down, I even have it in the same order that I had originally decided upon. Here's where I have that journaling piece. I did use a die cut from my stash to put that fun torn notebook edge on the end of it, just like it shows in the page maps design. And then I'm grabbing my edge distressing tool and I'm going to go around all 6 of these pieces of paper just to rough up the edges a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is once again kind of play around with the placement of things. But like I said, I'm not even sure. I'll have to, maybe do a little comparison between this and the final layout and see if I ended up getting them back in the same spot. I was kind of feeling like there was a lot of, that sand color all the way around. So I pulled out an old tool. I thought about maybe doing a little bit of stippling, I think it's called, on the edges with some brown ink. And then I went through a couple of the other papers that I had sitting there from the kit to see, maybe I'll just trim this cardstock down and put a thin border of a mat behind it. So I tested out a couple of different options here of both pattern paper, and then this darker color is Journey from Close to My Heart. And I thought that matched that one pattern paper really well, but I didn't like just the 2 cardstock colors next to each other. I definitely was leaning towards something of a pattern. I didn't mind that orange one there, but I'm not really a big fan of animal print, so I set that one to the side. This is the one that I liked the best just because of the way that the pattern was showing all the way around. It kind of made sense. There were a few other papers that I tried that, too much of it was covered, and so then it looked kind of weird just having that little bit showing. But I'm going to mess around with it a little bit more until I like what I see. And basically what I'm going to do is take that dark turquoise journey color cardstock, and I'm going to put that immediately behind the shortbread paper, and then I'm going to mat both of those onto the pattern paper. So I trimmed my papers down, and then this is a lot of paper that's not going to show. So I definitely took a little bit of time to gut out the centers of the 2 bottom pieces, not only to save paper, because I do like to be thrifty with my paper, But also, I don't know about you guys, but my scrapbooks get really full very fast. I do a lot of embellishing, and there's definitely dimension going on. And so if I can do anything to kind of help flatten it out a little bit, like reducing the layers of cardstock, then I will, just so I can fit more pages into my scrapbook. So rather than having 3 pieces of cardstock, it'll really only be just the one. I did also grab a sponge and some of that Journey ink, and I sponged a little bit of ink all the way around the 2 outer frames. And then I took my white gloss spray from Dina Wakley. This is one of my very favorite tricks. And I splattered just a couple of white drops onto that shortbread colored cardstock, which I know you can't really see in the video, but you'll probably be able to catch some of those in the close-ups at the end. So then I went ahead and I started adhering everything down. I'm not going to lie, this layout took a little bit of math and thinking to make sure that I was getting everything centered and even. But once I had it figured out, I just used my T-square ruler to make sure that it all lined up correctly. And I'm keeping these 3x4s fairly close to each other with about 1/8 of an inch in between all of them there. Okay, and so here is where I start coming back in. I've got, the basics done, and I need to think about the embellishing. I'm also going to stamp some journaling lines on that one square down there. Now, the fun thing about using these Hip Kit papers is that I also have a whole bunch of embellishments to work with. So I did do quite a bit of digging through the chipboard pieces, the die cut pieces. There were puffy stickers. I mean, I had a lot of options, and I just kind of went through all of them and set a few things off to the side as potential options. So I don't end up using all of them, but I do use some of them. So just kind of a digging. I really thought of this particular kit when I had this photo just because it has a lot of like dream catchers and kind of a little bit of a Native American or bohemian feel, which I thought went well with my Arizona picture. So I'm not going to end up using that, although I did really love that little drapey piece there. I am going to use this dream catcher here. It's so pretty and perfect. I love the way that it kind of, if my photo is going to be a little bit tilted, I like how I can put that on straight. And then I was trying to bring in a sun somewhere, but that didn't end up working. So I try a couple of different pieces here. But anyway, like I said, this picture is an old one that my dad found and gave me when I was at their house over the holidays. And the fun thing is that actually my sister and I were both born and raised in Arizona. We live in Michigan now because that's where my parents are originally from. But we are desert babies. And so it was just kind of fun to have this picture of my parents, in the desert there, even though it was a trip back after we had moved back to Michigan. But I think it's just kind of a fun way to sort of tell the story of, how that came to be. My mom loved reading Zane Grey novels. And so before they had me, but they were newly married, they just kind of went on an adventure and pulled up roots and went and moved to Arizona. And then my sister and I came along. And then when I was about 9 years old, my family moved back to Michigan for my dad's job. So we've been here ever since. So I do feel a bit more like a Michigan girl than an Arizona girl. But like I said, I just thought it would be kind of fun to preserve this photo, get it behind a page protector and save it. And then also just kind of document that story for future generations. So like I said, I had this stamp from Studio Calico that I bought a long time ago, and I was like, this is the perfect opportunity to use it. I thought about maybe stamping it down over top of the journaling lines, just as kind of like a little background, but then I decided to pull out some peach-colored cardstock, and I'm going to fussy cut around it. So 3 of the sides were pretty easy to fussy cut, but the 3rd side definitely took a little bit of maneuvering. And my cat Atticus did not make it any easier because that was right at the moment that he decided he wanted to get involved. And I was like yelling at him because I'm like, I'm going to cut off one of your whiskers. Like he kept sticking his head right where the scissors were. I think he was interested in that little piece of paper that I was cutting off that him looked like a dangling string of some kind. And so he was a bit of a challenge, but I got my fussy cutting done. Apparently this is where he wants to lay. I hope you guys don't mind. He does move out of the way in just a second. And I did manage to not cut off any of his whiskers and got my fussy cutting of the state of Arizona done. So next I'm going to figure out where exactly I want to put it. I was kind of thinking down here tucked underneath the photo, but then it was starting to feel really heavy down there in that part of the layout. So I'm going to move it around a little bit and just kind of have that cluster in the top corner of the photo. Oh my gosh, Atticus, out of the way. I'm going to put this dream catcher here off to the side, and I'm going to end up moving my state of Arizona right here. I didn't want to cover up too much of that feather pattern paper because it was so pretty and it had so many good colors in it. But I think that there is enough of it still showing, even though that fussy cut piece is over the top of it. So I'm going to leave that there. And I like how that kind of creates a little visual triangle of like an orangey, peachy type of color. So then I needed to kind of figure out what I was going to do with the title. So you can see I pulled out some of those alpha puffy stickers that came with this hip kit. And I'm going to work on those in a second. I'm finishing getting the other pieces glued down. I did have to put some foam tape behind that dream catcher piece because my photo is popped up on several layers of scrap cardstock. I like to keep a little bag in my desk drawer of pieces that, you know, I can layer behind something like this and save on a little bit of foam tape. So that photo is kind of popped up quite a bit. And so I had to add a little bit of glue and foam tape to put some of those pieces over the top. Now, recently, my friend Melissa Miner, whom I like to do a collaboration with on the second Friday of every month, she had a video where she had this cool ruler that she used to kind of lay out her stickers first so she could see how she was going to use them. And I don't have that ruler, but I was like, I do have a ruler. So I kind of borrowed from that trick that she showed, and I took the alpha puffy stickers and I spelled out the word Arizona because I didn't want to commit to putting them down without seeing first if it was going to fit somewhere on the page or what it was going to look like. So I just have the bottoms of them barely tacked to that T-square ruler. And I was actually pretty excited because they fit perfectly in that 3-inch space there across the bottom square. And I felt like it should maybe span, you know, 2 of those bottom squares, but I really liked the look of having it completely contained in the one in the bottom left corner. So even though I kind of move it around and test it a little bit, I do end up going back over right here, and I'm gonna stick them down into that bottom left corner. Now they are pretty sticky, but I just get a little nervous, especially since now that I've been touching them and playing with them, that maybe, you know, the oils in my fingers or something have removed some of the adhesive off the back. So on most of them, I did kind of just put a couple of dabs of liquid glue before sticking them down, just to make sure that, you know, 10 years from now, I don't open up my scrapbook and find them all fall into the bottom of the page protector. Then I had these 2 die cut pieces, also from that same kit, and it said my story. And I thought, what about kind of spanning it over the top in the bottom of the Arizona word and saying my Arizona story? And then I wasn't sure about that because I'm like, well, is it really my story or it's like my parents' story? But you know what? I don't have a die cut that says our, it just says my. So we're going to go with my story, my Arizona story instead. So I put that down as the rest of the title. Then I felt like since I had introduced that dark turquoise color to the title, and I also had it in the pattern paper above the photo, I wanted to bring it in a little bit more in a third spot. So I found this puffy heart also from the kit, and I'm going to put it right over, hopefully in the correct spot, about where Phoenix is located, because that is where we live. So I'm going to do that. And then I still felt like I kind of had some empty space up here in the top. I had already glued down that little arrow thing. And I was kind of regretting it, but I was like, I'm not going to try to pull that up because I'm just going to rip the paper. So now I gotta do something else up there. And I went back to that stamp set, and it says on there, I love you to Arizona and back. And I thought that was really cute. So I'm going to end up stamping that in that journey colored ink right there. And so it looks like the arrow is pointing at that little sentiment. So you can see that here. I did have to get my head right over the page in order to do that. And then the last thing I had in the kit that I pulled out and tried to use but ended up not using were some of those epoxy dots. So instead I went back to a couple more of those puffy hearts, and I just scattered a few of those around the page. And so, yeah, this one actually came together pretty quickly, and I don't know where I'm going to put it. I do have one scrapbook that's got, random pages like this that are not in chronological order for my family, but just like fun, random old pictures that, from time to time that I like to scrapbook. So I'm going to put it in there, and I'm glad I was able to discover and save this picture and document the story for my kids and future generations. All right, guys, I hope you have enjoyed watching, and I will see you soon. Bye. Happy crafting.